The fluorescent lights of the grocery store flickered behind me as I sat in my car, mindlessly scrolling through my phone. I just finished another grueling double shift at the restaurant, and the thought of returning to my empty house felt more exhausting than comforting. The small grocery store on the outskirts of town had become my regular late-night stop, a liminal space between work and home where I could decompress. My name is Connor, and I've always prided myself on being cautious, perhaps overly so. My sister jokes that I'm paranoid, but I prefer to think of it as being prepared. I keep my location shared with my family at all times, never dawdle in parking lots, and always stay aware of my surroundings. These habits are my armor against an unpredictable world, a way to maintain control when everything else feels chaotic. Tonight, though, that armor would prove useless. The store had just closed, its windows dark except for the security lights that cast long shadows across the empty parking lot. The elderly cashier had flipped the closed sign right after I'd checked out, and I watched him shuffle away into the back of the store. Now it was just me, my turkey sandwich, and the quiet hum of my car's heating system. I should have driven straight home. That was one of my rules. But exhaustion had settled deep into my bones, and the peaceful solitude of the parking lot felt oddly comforting. The world seemed to pause here, suspended between the end of one day and the beginning of another. I took another bite of my sandwich, letting my guard down for just a moment. That's when I heard it, a sharp, desperate cry that shattered the silence. My head snapped up from my phone, heart instantly racing. A woman stood in front of my car, her figure illuminated by my headlights. She looked ordinary enough, well-dressed, clean, maybe in her early 30s. Nothing about her appearance immediately triggered my usual warning signals, but something felt off. The way she had appeared so suddenly without a sound made my skin crawl. My fingers instinctively found the door lock button, pressing it just as she began to round my car. She moved with an unsettling grace, her body flowing like water as she approached my window. Her hands gestured urgently for me to roll it down, her face a mask of concern. But I stayed frozen. My eyes locked on hers. Years of ingrained caution screamed at me to stay put, to keep the barrier between us intact. Then she shouted something that made my blood turn to ice. "There's someone in your back seat." Time seemed to stop. My heart thundered in my chest as panic flooded my system. Every horror story I'd ever heard about parking lot attacks flashed through my mind. My hand twitched toward the door handle, ready to bolt, but something held me back, a tiny voice of reason cutting through the fear. Slowly, forcing myself to breathe, I checked the rearview mirror. The back seat of my small hatchback was empty, just as it had been when I'd gotten in. I turned around completely, scanning every shadow and corner. Nothing. Relief warred with confusion as I turned back to face the woman. That's when I saw it. Her hand on my door handle, testing the lock. But worse than that was her face. What had seemed normal moments ago now looked wrong, like a mask pulled too tight across her skull. Her mouth stretched into an impossible smile, revealing rows of teeth that were too small, too numerous, like someone had taken a knife and carved little notches into her gums. Pure instinct took over. I slammed the car into reverse, my foot crushing the gas pedal. For one horrifying moment, she kept pace with the car, her grip on the handle unwavering, those two small teeth gleaming in the darkness. Then she let go, and I didn't look back. I drove halfway home before the shaking in my hands forced me to pull over. My mind raced with possibilities. Had she been trying to get me out of the car? Were there others waiting in the shadows? The image of her face, that twisted smile, burned itself into my memory. The safety of my house offered little comfort. I checked every lock twice and drew every curtain, but couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Sleep, when it finally came, brought no peace. Only dreams of her face, of hands reaching from the shadows, of teeth like little pearls glinting in the dark. Then, the sound of pounding on my front door jolted me awake at 4:17 a.m. Through the fog of exhaustion, I heard a familiar voice calling my name. "Connor? Connor, are you there?" It was Brian, my neighbor from across the street. We weren't close, but I knew him well enough. He walked his dog past my house every morning and always waved hello. Relief began to seep in, but something still felt wrong. "What's going on?" I called through the door, not daring to open it. "Do you have someone over right now?" His voice sounded strange. "No, why?" I thought I saw someone in your window." My blood ran cold. The house was dark behind me, filled with shadows that suddenly seemed alive. Then a crucial detail hit me. "Brian," my voice wavered, "is Bailey with you?" The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Then came a soft, horrible chuckle. When the voice spoke again, it was lower, colder. "Bailey's a girl, isn't she?" The doorknob began to turn, slowly at first, then with violent force. I backed away, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. The door shuddered in its frame as something slammed against it. Then silence. When I finally gathered the courage to peek through the blinds, I saw her, the woman from the parking lot, walking away down the street. Her figure seemed to ripple in the darkness, like a mirage in the desert, before disappearing completely. My phone buzzed, making me jump. A text from the real Brian. "Hey, are you okay? I saw someone in your yard." I stared at the message, my hands shaking. The woman knew where I lived. She'd followed me home. She'd almost gotten me to open my door. But why? What did she want? Then last week I was unpacking the last box from my move, one I hadn't opened in the chaos of relocating. Inside was an old photo album I'd forgotten about. As I flipped through it, my heart stopped. There, in a faded family photo from my 10th birthday party, stood a woman in the background. She was partially hidden behind other party guests, but her face was clear enough. That same stretched smile, those same small carved teeth. She'd been watching me for 17 years. But that wasn't the worst part. As I stared at the photo, memories from my childhood started flooding back. Memories I'd somehow forgotten. The friend my sister had who no one else could see. The reason my mother always insisted on sharing locations. The real reason my father had disappeared when I was 12. Now I understand why she chose that night to finally reveal herself. Why she waited until I was alone. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was trying to warn me. Because last night, as I was getting ready for bed, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Just for a second, in the fluorescent light, I saw it. My smile, stretched too wide, my teeth looking as smaller than I remembered. Like mother, like son. And now, every time I pull into a parking lot at night, I can't help but look for others like me in my rearview mirror, counting teeth in the darkness.